Okay, Genevieve Lance, you're good to go. Okay. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here, the regular meeting of Council for February 7th at 7 o'clock. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Hearing none, will somebody please move the adoption of the agenda as presented? Councillor Back, seconder on the matter. Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. I guess I should just say again a reminder to members of the public. Our meetings are being conducted in a hybrid fashion in accordance with our policies. We have members of staff, members of council, and members of the public that are participating both virtually and also here in person tonight. So you'll see me switching back and forth between members of the public here as well as at home or wherever you may be. Okay, tonight we have a rather slim agenda in the sense that we don't have lots of other fixings like extra meeting minutes to pass or release of closed meetings. It's really going to be public input and then on to the regular reports. Our council reserves a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of each regular meeting of council to provide opportunity for members of the public to share their concerns with us. For that, to participate in that, we do have a sign-up list that is circulated ahead of time. On that list, I have 2 members of the public that would like to speak at the front end, and I have an additional member of the public that would like to speak to item 8.7 directly at the time that item is coming up for discussion. And so at this point, I'm going to welcome up 2 speakers. I have Bev Parslow, followed by Renee Gorley. Bev Parslow, welcome.
Okay, dear members of council, in 2021, I made several presentations to you. First of all, one, the residents of Donegal Place voted overwhelmingly requesting a 30-kilometer speed limit on the street. When will this request be fulfilled? The residents have made their voices quite clear on this issue. 2, the Delbrook Community Association requested a master plan for traffic calming on Delbrook. When will the district be able to start work on this project? Thirdly, emails from the local municipalities of Burnaby, the city, West Van, suggested that prices for speed bumps in North Vancouver district were much higher than their areas. Some municipalities also give financial assistance to residents requesting speed bumps. Can the district please examine costs to reduce expenses for residents and also examine the possibility of joint resident district funding? Fourthly, this is good news. We have been told now that the bump out on Evergreen and Delbrook will be going ahead this year. So thank you very much indeed. We are most grateful. Last week, and this is my 5th point, last week a request was made to engineering to put a speed board on Delbrook and Donegal. Within a week, one has been placed there, and within 5 minutes of observing speeds, we had one car doing 78 kilometers an hour. We are in urgent need of traffic calming throughout the district. Please, would you thank engineering for their prompt action? Thank you for taking these issues into consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Bev Parslow. Next up, we have Renee Gorley. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Renee Gorley, 686 St. Ives Crescent. As you are aware, because Bev just spoke, the Delbrook Community Association has been working on efforts to calm traffic within our neighborhood. And in doing so, we've come to appreciate that some of the staff are actually really progressive and would love to help our municipality become safer and more livable. However, they're occasionally hampered by decisions of previous councils. In particular, we've been told that a previous council put a moratorium on all traffic calming on collector roads. We would like to request that this moratorium be lifted so that individual projects can be considered on their own merits rather than being discarded out of hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee Gorley. Okay, seeing as how we still have time at the front end of the meeting, would anybody else like to speak at the front end of the meeting? Yes, we have one more in-house here. Juan is going to speak, but just to the attendees, if you put your hand up electronically, we'll have the clerks monitor that list if anybody else would like to address council for 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hello, Your Worship and members of council. I am Juan Palacio. I wanted to speak regarding.
Can I just make sure, just a second? Sorry, is Juan's microphone on? Sorry about that, Juan. We weren't catching that.
Did I start again?
Please.
Hello, Your Worship and members of council. I'm Juan Palacio. I wanted to speak regarding the pickleball community and what's being put in the news recently about how some communities are removing their pickleball courts. I've looked into it and I found that it is a great sport for seniors and I support their physical activity. I hope that the district is not going to be removing any, and perhaps we might even need to expand because nearby communities like West Vancouver is removing all of theirs, so they might be coming to the district. I just hope that this gets considered and that we don't follow the same path of becoming NIMBYs and removing the pickleball courts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council.
Juan. Okay. I don't see any hands amongst the attendees. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, I'm going to move on to the rest of the agenda. Thank you very much, the members of the public, for providing their comment. Again, I will state that at item 8.7, Peter Teven is listed as a speaker for that item, and I will remember to create that opportunity at the time. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. The first item up for discussion is West 16th Street bylaws 8459, 8460, and 8461. And I feel that this requires a little bit of an explanation as to why this is back. Back on January 9th, I tested positive for COVID and was not able to attend the subsequent regular meeting of council. At it, the council reached a tie on their discussion about the West 16th development. And obviously, after a developer has worked on a project for years, a tie is not very satisfactory. So what I've done is I've used the power under the provincial charter that a mayor has to bring an item back for reconsideration. And so that is why it is on the agenda tonight. It is back as though it were just returning from a public hearing, and that all members of council will be permitted an opportunity to speak to the item. And it is back for second and third consideration a second time. Okay, so with that, I probably will not be, because the item is coming back from a public hearing, there wouldn't normally be a staff presentation on the matter. And so it's just the matter is up for debate of the council, and I will be moving the recommendation. Is there someone else seconding the recommendation? I have Councilor Curran seconding. My own comments on this development. The Marine Drive corridor is a critically important area for us to put new housing options, and it is one of the most well-served transit corridors in the district. It's also one of the flattest areas in the district as a community, which makes it great for people to get around in. This particular development fits with the neighboring developments in terms of both scale and the types of units that are produced. So I find it to be a benefit in that way. It also has a housing agreement in place, which is going to defend opportunities for people to have alternate types of ownership in there with rental as well as ownership options. And so I think that it will be a valuable component of our development along Marine Drive. I will be supporting the matter. Councillor Curran, your comments?
Thank you. I'm pleased to see this brought back. I supported it last time and I'll be supporting it again for the same reasons. I think this aligns with many of the goals that we have set forward in our OCP action plan. It is in a community that has options to transit. It could definitely still use cycling and walking improvements everywhere. That goes for our entire community. But this project is unique in that it's half rental and half market, but it also contributes a CAC to the community. And that can be used to advance some of our many initiatives, including affordable housing. We've talked about contributing more to social services, as well as improving alternate transit. So I think we have, it checks off a lot of boxes. And this developer for a while had been working on, I think ahead of our policies, was already working on zero carbon buildings. So pleased to see that as well. And I think this is in a location that's perfect for the mode shift that we need to make as well. And I look forward to seeing this move along.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Next speaker is Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And my vote will not change. And I note as well that with Mayor Little's vote, this bylaw will now pass. I'll keep my comments extremely brief. I've already spoken twice on this at first reading and then at second and third reading. I believe there is not enough rental in this project. There's too much strata and too much parking, and specifically not enough affordable rental. I would support the district making the contributions necessary to secure affordable and rental housing in locations such as this. I believe it to be an ideal location for rental and affordable housing. And I believe, for my part, that an opportunity is lost when a site like this has a mix of 50% strata and 50% market rental, when in my view, it should be more rental and it should have an affordable component. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. Next speaker is Councillor Back for comments.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm really pleased to see that you brought this particular decision back to council. My position hasn't changed since the January 10th meeting. I believe I moved the staff recommendation at that point. We have had many opportunities to look at this project, starting with an early input opportunity. I've spent some time down in this area and taken a look at the site and surrounding developments. I think, as has been mentioned, it's well served by transit. Very walkable to all of your day-to-day needs. You've got a frequent transit there as well with the R2, not far from this particular development. The main concerns that were brought up at the public hearing, Your Worship, were around parking, and there isn't a lot of street parking in that area, and there's a little bit of pressure that's put on the street parking by some of the businesses. So I think that the parking is probably more than we want to necessarily promote in areas that are served as well as this one is by transit, but I think I do support it because of the parking pressures that are there right now in the area. So overall, I think it's a good looking project. It does fit our OCP in terms of the transition to single family homes south of there in Norgate. I think it'll fit really well in that area, and it's going to deliver 31 rental homes really at no cost to the district, where they're not asking for a reduction in DCCs or CACs. So I think it's an easy one to support, and I'm really glad that it's been brought back tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. I see Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I've already spoken on this too, and I voted against it. My main reasons for voting against it was it's in a location much like, or I disagree with this much the same as I disagreed 2 weeks ago with Marie Place, the 2 6 stories. When we have transportation really close, then that's the chance we have to put affordable housing in there, and those people probably, most of them will avail themselves of the public transit and other methods to get around if they're really close to it. And that would satisfy our GHG reductions. It would satisfy less parking. It would satisfy affordability. So what really bothered me with this project is the amount of strata and the amount of rental and no affordable. And that's why the district's not being asked to give up anything here, because they're not supplying us with affordable. And that's usually when we give. If we get some affordable housing, then we relax our fees. So I'm still not voting in favor of this. And I really wish we take a second look at when we're right next to transportation, like down at Marie Place and Phibbs Exchange and this one as well, that we would try for all those reasons. There's 3 wins there. For all those reasons, I wish we'd look at trying to make more affordable in that area, because the transportation is right there. People who buy strata 9 times out of 10 need parking. They have a car, at least one. So anyway, I'm voting against it again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Bond, your comments.
Thanks, Mayor Little. I'll be voting in favor as well as I did on when this came before council on the 10th of January. I think most of the technical reasons have been stated by other members on council. One thing I think to highlight here is that these are multifamily homes that are not right on an arterial, which I think is really important. A lot of the time we place multifamily homes either directly beside high traffic corridors right on the arterial. And I think there's significant research showing that both the pollution from motor vehicles and the noise associated with major arterial roads has adverse impact on human health. And so I think even though this is only half a block off the arterial, I think that's a good direction for us to look, because people that live in multi-family homes also enjoy living on quiet streets. And this West 16th, at least in this section, is a quiet and narrow street. And I think that being on such a street is a great place for people to live. And so I think the mix of rental and ownership is important. We can't do affordable housing on every private lot, especially if council hasn't moved some of the strategies that we've talked about, like density bonusing in certain areas for a rental or affordable rental. Those are things that we have discussed for a number of years, but have not made any clear decisions or direction to put those kind of policies forward. And I also would support looking at ways where we can encourage both more rental and non-market rental, but we haven't done that, and so these are the projects that we will get under our existing policies until we decide to change those things. So supportive of this. It's been in the works for many years. If it had been approved 3 or 4 years ago, then the homes would have been significantly more affordable, just having to do with the appreciation of real estate. And so I think the quicker we can get projects like this approved and constructed is a good thing.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Bond. I see no further speakers from council. So I'll call the question on matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillors Forbes and Hanson opposed. And I should also note, probably should have noted this at the front end of the meeting, that Councillor Murray is not able to be with us this evening. Thank you very much, council. Once again, regrettable that I had to miss that council meeting, but I was able to watch the video recording of it, and it's unfortunate we ended up in this situation, but I'm glad we were able to find a new resolution out of it. Okay, council, moving on to item 8.2. This is the proposed amendments to enable the e-scooter pilot. And just while staff are getting ready, the basics here are that the provincial government's identified a number of communities as potentials for having a pilot project. They added a couple more communities in the fall, and we have to put this legislative framework in place to officially recognize it. But the reality is much of this is already occurring in the community, and so this is more or less formalizing many of these matters. So I have Mr. Joyce, you popped up on the screen. You have an opening comment or straight to Zachary Masser?
I did pop up in your screen, Your Worship, but I will defer to Zachary, who's our TDM coordinator, as his report, and I'm sure he can answer council's questions.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Gavin, for that introduction. Thank you, Council and Your Worship, for welcoming me tonight to present the e-scooter pilot project. The report is, I hope, straightforward, but what we're seeking here is the introduction of new bylaw amendments that would allow e-scooters to use most of our road network to travel across the district, in conjunction with a similar process that occurred a couple of weeks ago at the city of North Vancouver. Just so we're clear for folks who are watching, the e-scooters that we're talking about are the L-shaped e-scooters that are for standing only. There are a number of other micromobility devices out there that aren't covered by this pilot. So at this time, they remain illegal in British Columbia unless they're used on private property. So they cannot be on our roadways, but e-scooters, should they be approved, would be allowed on our roadways, some of our roadways, and our paved paths like the Spirit Trail. The e-scooters really would be allowed on local and collector streets that have speed limits posted of up to and including 50 kilometers an hour. That will exclude some of our more major arterials that have higher traffic volumes in an effort to ensure that safety is preserved and balanced between other road users. The e-scooter users will have to be 16 years or older and wear a helmet at all times when traveling around. And they have to have a bell, lights. They cannot tow or carry other passengers. They're really for individual use only at this time. The District of North Vancouver approach, in line with the city, is to allow personal e-scooters. That is to say, those that people own or perhaps rent from a local business, like a bike shop that offers rentals, but not e-scooter share. We already have e-bike share, and our approach to this, if you look back to the report from 2020, which I know is some time ago now, is to go through this micromobility pilot framework in phases. We've done the e-bike share approval. We're now introducing e-scooter share for personal use, and we'll learn from both experiences about what we can do going forward about shared micromobility, whether e-scooter share is appropriate someday in our North Shore community, but also whether other devices will perhaps one day also appear on the street. And that's what the province is also seeking. This is a pilot framework until April of 2024. They're hoping to collect information through the municipal partners in order to inform long-term regulatory and legal changes to the Motor Vehicle Act to add to the ecosystem of transportation options offered that are electric, small in nature, and typically for one person. So that kind of summarizes the key elements of the e-scooter pilot here on the North Shore. And I'm sticking around and happy to take your questions and comments, and I'll be taking note of those as well for next steps.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Back, you have a motion.
I'll move the recommendation for discussion, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on the matter? Oh, Councillor Hanson's got it. Councillor Hanson will be seconding. Councillor Back, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Madarin, for your comments as well. I just have a number of questions that kind of fall under a few different categories. So maybe I'll just get right into the first couple. The first is around communication and how will people know where they're permitted to ride these scooters? Are we going to, will there be signage to indicate this? We'll be doing a bit of a marketing campaign around this as well.
Through Your Worship, that's a great question. And yes, I'd like to say all of the above, but we obviously need to do quite a bit of education about this. You'll notice in the report package that there were two maps developed with this report. The first that appears is a new schedule to the bylaw. Because of the way that our bylaws are written, usually in the negative, that schedule basically outlines where e-scooters are going to be prohibited. So those arterial roads that I noted earlier, but also all of our unpaved trails in the park system. At the end of the package is a map showing where the e-scooters will be able to travel. And it's obviously got a lot more color on it, showing the connected network of streets and pathways that we have in the district where e-scooters can go. That's the map that we'll be distributing, obviously on our website and through our social media channels. But we also want to communicate this out to the business community. They are the front line in terms of sales, and if our bike rental shops start renting them out, renting out the e-scooters, we want to make sure that users know where they're supposed to travel. So obviously that's the network piece. There's the whole rules piece of who can use this, and when you're on the street, where you're supposed to travel, whether that's the bike lane or the right-hand side. We want to develop a really thoughtful package that is easy to absorb and widely distributed through our existing channels, whether that's online or physically through materials that we print.
Thank you. And just again, through your worship, the speed limit of 24 kilometers an hour. Where does that come from? How did the province come up with that number?
Great question, your worship. Through your worship, the province of BC is not the first to introduce this kind of piloting framework. Ontario kind of beat us to it a few years ago. And in order to, I think one of the goals is to have comparable data from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So in one sense, they copied some of the regulations that Ontario developed, including the 24 kilometers an hour, restriction on the speed. That's intended as a speed governance on the e-scooter itself. We know that there are e-scooters out on the market, particularly online, that exceed that speed. And we're still working with the province to figure out how do we actually monitor and regulate those devices. But it is a speed limit that is more or less common in the shared world across North America. And it's become a standard that a lot of manufacturers are just automatically incorporating, knowing that some of their devices are intended for these mix of uses that we're seeing.
Great. Yeah, no, it is interesting because when you look, I know I just Googled the other day to see what e-scooters were out there as far as for the ones for purchase, and they were all the governor was all above 24 kilometers an hour on all the ones that I looked at. And I know on e-bikes, I believe it's generally 32K an hour. So that's good. And I guess one of my other questions is, well, maybe it's more of a comment, is that if we are permitting these scooters are allowed on arterials only where there's bike lanes or mobility lanes, it really highlights the importance of having a built-out, connected, safe network of mobility lanes. So when we look at these active transportation projects, we're not just thinking about cycling or e-bikes, but including now e-scooters and everything else that falls under the micromobility umbrella. I think that's going to be really important to consider. But I do have a few more questions, but I'll continue around and let some of the others ask questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. I believe Councillor Hanson, you seconded the matter. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I look forward to Councillor Back's incisive questions and continuing to learn more about this. I'm happy to support this particular pilot project. I note that it is a pilot project. It comes to an end in 2024. So that gives us time to monitor the impacts and ensure that no harms are occurring. And if they are occurring, we can always reverse course. It's integrated with the City of North Vancouver's pilot and is, as Councillor Back has adverted, all part of an overall change and movement toward new forms of transportation that involve less emissions and less cost. So I look forward to the pilot, and I look forward to monitoring its outcome as the years unfold. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. My own comments on the matter. I guess first a couple of questions. You know, obviously cars can go a lot faster than the speed limit, but we have the speed pushed back at us in a speedometer. It's front and central as a safety piece on our cars. How can they tell if they're going 24 kilometers an hour on these bikes or scooters?
Through your worship, for the most part, the e-scooters come with a speedometer integrated into the handlebar as well. That is part and parcel with the fact that they're exclusively motorized. So the throttle will give an indication of what speed you're traveling at.
And is it standard feature across all of the units sold in Canada to come standard with a front and rear light, or is that something people will have to add as an add-on?
They typically do, your worship, but if they don't, this piece of the regulations are provincial in nature, so they'll have to add those on to use them. I will note that those are only required between dusk and dawn. So if you're using it during the day, you could get away without having those lights.
I've seen a lot of people these days with lights on their helmets. Is that a satisfactory rear light if it's on the helmet rather than on the device?
I will have to check to confirm. I think it may be in line with the spirit of the regulation, your worship.
Okay. The bell and the horn, are they also standard typically?
Those, your worship, I believe are more of a mix. Some of the higher end e-scooters automatically come with a bell. For the most part, it's often like a bike. It's an add-on that you will be required to purchase.
Yeah, so some of those things are just going to be the challenges of working through, you know, potentially a grace period where we're giving out some warnings and educating people, but I don't see them as insurmountable challenges. One of my daughters was in Kelowna for the last couple of years, and Kelowna had a massive e-scooter program, particularly downtown, and she worked right on Bernard Street in downtown Kelowna. And at the request of Kelowna General Hospital, they reduced the governed speeds of all of the e-scooters in Kelowna. The program started out at 30 kilometers an hour, and they reduced it down to 20 kilometers an hour because they were starting to see motorcycle-like injuries on e-scooters. And also, I don't see any mention of it in this, but I'm assuming, and maybe I missed it, but they were very careful in the Kelowna example to say that alcohol consumption is treated as though it's a car. So in their iteration, having a couple of drinks and hopping on the rentable e-scooter and heading on a public roadway, they wanted to be very clear that can net you a ticket. Do we have that same situation here?
Through your worship, I will come back to you and confirm, but my understanding is that the e-scooter riders have the same rights and obligations as vehicle operators. So the drinking requirements or prohibition on drinking and riding would apply in this situation. And the province has introduced a number of fines. I can pull them up to confirm, but the enforcement of those are moving violations under the Motor Vehicle Act. So the police would intervene in those situations. I think they might have just a catch-all in this case of disorderly operation or something of that effect.
Well, I think that we should make sure that people are reminded of those obligations when we on all of the information that we have promoting this program, just because I can see situations where there's some confusion because if somebody was on a manual scooter and off in a trail somewhere, the police probably would not be pulling out the breathalyzer. But if you're operating on a public street and you have a powered device, you definitely could be subject to that level of a ticketing or action under the Motor Vehicle Act. So I think it's important for us to include that in our communications on this going forward, once we have that clearly defined. But other than that, I think that this represents, in a lot of cases, the de facto, and we're catching up with the de jure. I think a lot of people are already operating with these vehicles. I've seen several of them on the way, on the road today alone. And so we need to catch up and make sure that we're giving good information and setting an appropriate standard. But I think people have already shown that that is a way that they want to be able to travel in our community. I will be supportive. Councillor Back, I see you as wanting to speak a second time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I do agree with your comments. I think we are catching up here. It's not the district's fault, but this is a whole new industry that's opening up and a type of transportation. So I, like yourself, Your Worship, I'm very supportive of it. Now I know, from what I understand, the city has approved this pilot project, and I assume it'll go to West Vancouver soon. Can you comment at all, through Your Worship, if the First Nations, if Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh have been consulted at all, or how that would work if you're near the reservation on a scooter?
Through Your Worship, I will just take this opportunity to confirm to Mayor Little that previously I just checked the fines, and yes, failure to operate the e-scooters in compliance with the regulations, such as driving, riding under the influence, would net you a fine. To answer your question, Councillor Back, through Your Worship, First Nations are eligible to participate in this pilot, and we did initial outreach to both the Squamish Nation and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation when we put together the proposal package. At the time, they were not interested in joining us in the joint proposal. Since then, we haven't engaged directly on whether they have changed their mind. However, given their non-participation at this time, you wouldn't be able to ride an e-scooter on any of their territory at this time. But I know that they have expressed interest in other micromobility and active transportation matters, so that could change under the pilot timeline.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, again, I'm very supportive of this. I think, as the Lime Bike Share program has shown, if you provide the new sort of options for people, they will use them. And I think this is another step in the right direction in terms of providing some different sorts of options. So very supportive to see this moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor, any further speakers? Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Yeah, just a couple things. I need some clarification because I looked at the chart, what was the yes and the no, and then in the reading, and then now listening, I think I've gotten confused. These scooters are for personal use scooters, but it also means businesses that may sell them or let people. Some businesses let them take them for a short trial. So am I correct then that that's for personal use and stores will be selling them? And those ones, once personally owned, would be under this as well. But we're not doing like an e-share.
Through Your Worship, that's correct. We wouldn't be doing e-scooters deployed across the district the way the Lime e-bikes are currently deployed.
Thank you. Another thing I'm a bit confused about is I thought I read the bikes were up to the 24K. And I thought that on 30K streets, they didn't need bike lanes, but were required to go as far over to the right as possible. And if the street was 50K, they had to have the bike lanes. But now in that chart, I'm re-looking at it again, it says that it's up to 50K, local and collector is okay. It's only the arterial where they actually have to have a bike lane. Which of those are true?
Through your worship, I'm sorry for the confusion. So there are provincial regulations that if we did nothing and council were just to pass the provincial regulation, those would be in effect and would be a little bit more constrained than what we've indicated. What we're doing here on the North Shore and in the district in this case is they can use any street that is a local or collector road, and those are highlighted or not highlighted in the map in the schedule, up to 50 kilometers an hour. If that street has a designated cycle path, the e-scooter has to use the cycle path. If there is no cycle path, they have to be on the far right of the street. They can go on arterials only if there is a designated cycle path. So if there is no cycle path, they're not permitted on the arterial.
So what we're relaxing is that what the provincial government says 30 on streets that are only 30K, we're relaxing that by saying streets up to all streets up to 50K.
Well, through your worship, what we're relaxing is the specific rule about bike facilities and cycle paths when and where they're supposed to take those facilities.
Okay. All right. I had in the reading too, I also noticed something that the mayor has brought up where the lights on a helmet. But I thought I also read something about carrying them, and I thought, how does somebody carry a light? Maybe there's a better definition of what carry is, but how do you carry a light and bicycle and pay attention? Any comment on that?
Through your worship, the lights typically, if they're not on the helmet, they would be installed on the rear wheel hub and the front support post for the handlebar. I'm not quite sure about carrying a light. You're supposed to be riding with both hands on the handlebar. So
yeah, I read that in the report somewhere. I didn't highlight it, but I read it, and that's what I thought, the same as you. Enforcement. I think enforcement's going to be a bit tough on this. And what kind of feedback did you get from the RCMP if they're going to start getting called for these kind of things?
Through your worship, the RCMP indicated that they have capacity to do enforcement on our behalf. It is their general field of responsibility, since these are moving violations, and the Motor Vehicle Act is under their jurisdiction for enforcement. What they've told us, and they've engaged with both the province and the municipalities, is that they will monitor behavior and inform us of any issues that they observe. And we will also, as part of our data collection obligations, be in the field observing and monitoring rider behavior. If and when we observe areas or instances of repeated issues, we have the ability, and the RCMP is willing to conduct spot enforcement, so targeting a location and times to give warnings or even penalties according to the new penalties under the Motor Vehicle Act.
I just want to say, and this is no insult or of any kind to the RCMP, but much like the district, they have limited resources too. And one of the presenters at the beginning of this meeting, they're having a terrible speeding problem in their neighborhood, and in Deep Cove, when police come out and do like a spot speeding trap, it's right back to being speeders again, 2 or 3 days later. So I'm not sure about that, and the fact that they can go, that these will be able to go on paved paths. I don't think the RCMP have a lot of resources for monitoring those paths. Anyway, I guess that's most of it. I do have a concern about safety and putting these bikes on roads without, our scooters on roads without protection. And then if we put them with the bicyclists on the busier roads, I am concerned about the traffic that will be be in those lanes, and the e-bikes as well as the regular bikes. So I am concerned about the safety of these. Is there any way, has there been any discussion about these personally owned bikes being registered so that if there is an accident or somebody just doesn't want to stop and give their name or information to a person if there's an accident, is there any thought or discussion about registering them?
Through your worship, at this point in time, the province hasn't indicated any desire to require license and registration for either cyclists or e-scooter riders, but that is part of the feedback that we're hoping to collect and will inform their long-term regulatory process post-pilot in 2024.
How often will you be coming out with stats?
Through your worship, the provincial requirement is that we produce an annual report. So at the very least, we will be reporting both to council and to the province once a year after adoption. But we can come back more frequently if that is something council is interested in.
And the stakeholders, are you somehow going to involve the community around these lanes? Will they have a way to have some input in here along with other stakeholders?
Through your worship, one of the areas we're required to report on from the province's perspective is the stakeholder and community perspective. So we will be using some of our existing tools like the North Shore Panel Survey to get more information from that user group about e-scooters, but we also plan to do on-the-ground intercept surveys and interactions with the community, as well as continuing to engage with ACDI and our other advocacy groups on the North Shore who've been involved already and will probably continue to be involved.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, one last point I was going to make. If we're going to use this map to sort of inform the community, I had a very hard time telling color differences on that map. Is there any way that we can, I mean, I don't know why we go with, you know, the dark colors and the dots and all the black, and can we make any more sort of brighter, differentiation here between the things on the grid?
Through your worship, we can definitely work on the public facing map for
Okay.
distribution.
Good. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your work on this.
Very much. Councillor Bond, your comments?
Thanks. Yeah, just a few brief questions. Wondering, obviously this is a North Shore approach, so the 3 municipalities on the North Shore are hopefully going to be sharing the same regulatory framework. We do have provincial land, specifically Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, with Highway 1 bisecting many of our communities. Does the general provincial regulations then apply when you're crossing through interchanges or you know, trying to get from the district to the city on Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure lands, and how would that, is there any potential hiccups there?
For your worship, that's a great question. So the provincial regulations don't allow use on Highway 1 or any highway above 50 kilometers an hour. So we hopefully will not see anyone riding alongside the vehicles there. But that is that is the correct interpretation. And where our own bylaw is silent, the provincial regulation prevails. So generally speaking, the moment something is provincial in nature, that's when their rules will apply. And in that regard, we don't differ very much at all. You must use the bike lane when provided. And if it's a street up to 50 kilometers an hour, you have to stick to the right-hand side.
And then multi-use paths under the provincial regulations are the same as we're having in our proposed regulations?
Through your worship, I think that's generally correct, yes.
Okay. Does the city of Vancouver have an e-scooter regulation at this point in time, or are they ahead of us or behind us?
Through your worship, they are ahead of us. They moved forward last June or July. And in this regard, we're actually pretty aligned with the City of Vancouver. They have moved forward with personal use only. They're relying on police enforcement, not municipal enforcement for their rules. And they've generally taken the similar approach of relying mostly on provincial rules to define their local context.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kern, your comments?
Thank you for the presentation. Happy to support this. I think a lot of the points have been covered. Good questions, everyone. But I did just want to comment on the infrastructure to support some of these mobility shifts. And I think we talk about that there's lots of people that will not try this because there isn't safe and complete infrastructure. So it would be interesting in the feedback. You know, we usually talk to people who did it, but we kind of miss all the people who didn't do it because they didn't feel safe riding along unprotected areas. So I don't know what the outreach will be, but I would imagine that the more that we can provide safe ways for people to get out of their cars, the more that people will happily do that. I think no one enjoys being in traffic, and Councillor Bond made some good points around the health impacts of that. And so we want people to be able to move around our community in healthy new ways. So I think these pilot projects are a great way to go out there and see how people feel about it, just recognizing that some people will never try things if they don't feel safe trying them. So it'll be great to see how the feedback comes back. And I'm really glad to see that we're working across the North Shore, and hopefully if it becomes more popular, perhaps more people will join in. And yeah, anyway, it'll be good to see how it goes. Thanks.
Councillor Kern. Councillor Forbes, I had you at full 6 minutes. Is there a clarifying question? Okay, thank you very much. I guess I do have a question remaining about sidewalks. Obviously, sidewalks are used as a transition zone. You have a bike lane, and then you want to transition onto private property at a mall, a grocery store, or whatever. Is our expectation by this that somebody dismounts before crossing the sidewalk and stays dismounted onto the private property, or are those considered just transition zones from those areas?
For your worship, crossing of streets or sidewalks is to be treated the same way as cyclists. So if there's infrastructure or signage, elephant's feet pasted on the ground that allow you to cross, you can while riding, but the expectation is to dismount. The rule actually at the provincial level is whenever you're near pedestrians, you're supposed to give them a wide berth in the right of way.
I think the other thing we should consider as we go through the pilot is that we have a number of areas in the district where we have a wider than standard sidewalk and we don't have a bike lane. And so this is places like Marine Drive, where the constrained nature of the street are going to be very hard for us to provide dedicated bike lanes when our first thing we're trying to deliver is dedicated bus lanes in that space. But we have wider than standard sidewalks on both sides of the road. And so, you know, maybe we also need to consider, rather than providing the infrastructure on street, moving some of it up onto sidewalk and allowing people to move through that area, because right now the bike infrastructure is down on 15th. So somebody on an e-scooter would have to go 2 blocks out of their way, then traverse east and west, then come 2 blocks back out to Marine. I just don't think they're likely to do it. So I think as the pilot goes along, I think we're going to have to consider ways to make it even more flexible, because I think this is going to be a growing way that people are going to do first mile, last mile travel in our community, and so we have to adapt. Council, I see no further speakers on the matter. I call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Next item we have is the introduction of the budget for 2022 in the draft financial plan workbook. And before I hand the matter off to Mr. Daniluk for his presentation of the document, I just want to state again, because we've been through this every year. This is now our fourth budget process of this council, but it always comes up. This is the introduction of the budget. And I know we all scramble through it and try to find questions that we have to have on the first day. We've actually extended the public input period for this document. We're creating more opportunity for people to provide their feedback as the document goes by, and that extends to council as well. So don't think that you have to have your questions tonight. We're only just introducing this to both council and the public tonight. And so I wanted to just put that out there and be sure that that tonight, the reason why it's being received on table as opposed to part of the package ahead of time was because it's not the intent to receive feedback tonight. If you have questions about the process, questions about the public's opportunity to comment on the matter, all fair game. But really, we're going to be sending it home with you. You have some opportunity to dig into it, and then we're going to create many opportunities for people to provide feedback going forward. I'm going to hand it off now. I see Andy Wardell from Finance. I'm just going to hand it to Andy first and then over to Rick. Andy, do you have any opening comments?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So through Your Worship to Council and the community, I would like to thank Mr. Danlick, his team, the general managers, and the leadership teams and our partner agencies, along with their staff, for the collective efforts in bringing this budget forward for Council's consideration during these challenges times. Tonight, as you've duly noted, Mr. Danlick has a short presentation to set the stage for public input, which is approximately 3 weeks long, followed by council deliberations. And over to Mr. Danlick.
Mr. Wardell, Mr. Danlick.
Thank you for that introduction, Andy, and good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public listening in tonight. I'm Rick Danlick. I'm the Deputy General Manager of Finance, and I'm here to introduce the 5-year financial plan and the 2022 budget. Just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. This plan responds to these challenging times by providing resources that strengthen our operational stability, mitigate and manage new risks, and move forward with Council's priorities in a changing economy. Our proposed property tax increase for this year continues to be one of the lowest in the region, while increasing our investments in infrastructure. Before I get into the presentation, I'll just add that the presentation will take approximately 10 minutes, and the draft budget workbook is now available on our website at dnv.org/budget. Virtual public input on the budget opens tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And as the Mayor indicated, Council's opening remarks are scheduled for later on this month, on February 28th. So this is just a matter of tabling the information and beginning the process on receiving public input and then leading up to deliberations on March 8th. The presentation will cover a review of the timeline for the process, including steps we've taken since last March, our approach to setting priorities for the plan, including some capital plan highlights, a brief discussion on the new economy and the recent announcement to review the municipal finance system by the province and UBCM, the proposed property tax increase on the average home for 2022, and the next steps in the budget process. By all accounts, 2021 was a challenging and a busy year. You can see by the slide in front of you, there were a series of workshops and meetings over the past year that led to improvements in our planning framework. These started with Council's approval of a Climate Action Advisory Committee in early last year, followed by endorsement of the Strategic Facilities Planning Framework, which will certainly help shape investments in facilities in the 5- and 10-year versions of the financial plan, and approval of the OCP action plan prior to the summer break. This was followed by a transportation workshop, updates on housing needs, and direction on the use of district-owned lands for rental and affordable and social housing. 2022 utility rates and user fees were also approved, and a financial plan amendment was approved before the end of the year. Finally, this last month in January, there was an update on climate and biodiversity that was received, and a workshop on transportation was held at the end of the month. Public input was received during these meetings and workshops, and council direction has been integrated into this draft financial plan. We're now entering the public input and approval stage of the budget. Public input will remain open until the end of February before council deliberations on the plan take place on March 8th. Priorities for this plan are set through a 10-year strategic planning framework, which is shaped by our legislative and historic services, our strategies and long-term plans, and council directions, which define specific work to be accomplished over a 4-year period. Resources through the financial plan are first allocated to sustain our existing infrastructure, which is prioritized based on our asset management plans, risk, and maintaining our service levels, and then allocated to new projects and initiatives, which are prioritized by strategic plan, then corporately based on benefits, costs, and available funding. Project schedules are also adjusted to minimize service disruption, leverage grants, and for the timing of developer contributions. And throughout the year, when new direction is received from council, it's incorporated into this planning framework. This year, we worked to include additional information on council directions, providing information on accomplishments in 2021 and actions in 2022 at the front end of the workbook. And then a supplemental section will provide additional pages, including current challenges and long-term performance objectives. And this section's at the back of the workbook. To help with these discussions, there's a virtual forum on the website, which will include a special section on these directions, enabling members of the public to pose questions and comments online and continue the conversation. The capital plan is a multi-year plan with $477 million in works included over the next 5 years. The plan continues to grow, and resources have been added to keep pace with project timelines. The plan includes new provisions for affordable housing with over $12 million to service new projects. And when the value of district lands and amenity contributions are included in this figure, it increases to over $70 million over the next 5 years. The plan also includes over $93 million for transportation, with approximately 1/3 of that dedicated to expanding our active transportation network, which aims to connect our centers, our destination parks, and neighboring municipalities. These investments in housing and transportation help to address the top challenges faced by our businesses and industry. There's also new funding for climate action, including adaptation measures to reduce risk and mitigation measures to expand our public electric vehicle charging stations, amongst others. More than half of the investments in our community facilities and parks are for new capital, as recreation centers, parks, and sports fields are added, along with improvements that reimagine our library spaces. And as always, we continue to focus a large part of the capital plan on infrastructure renewal that sustains our community and the local economy. The long-term financial plan is obviously a longer-term view. It looks out over 10 years and incorporates incorporates and forecasts a financial position that's based on a set of financial principles, strategies, and policies. This plan was last updated in January 2021, where planned service level changes were shared, along with an estimated $200 million funding gap over the 10-year period. At that time, staff suggested the funding gap can be resolved within the current approach to property taxes when supported by key emerging financial strategies. Council has provided further direction since this last update on the long-term financial plan, and the next update is now targeted for the second quarter of 2022, where new information on the service levels and funding gaps will be shared. The use of reserves and debt is one of the key financial strategies aimed at bringing the district's plans and finances into balance. And these strategies do require further analysis and direction, including on target reserve fund balances and debt financing options and limits. Strategic use of debt in this financial plan balances the need to maintain and improve service levels with affordability and fairness, matching debt payments to the ratepayers benefiting from these long-lived assets. The use of debt in the financial plan, while rising over the next 5 years, is well within the district's ability to borrow. This financial plan provides resources to support our continued response to and recovery from the pandemic, focusing on community safety and the safety of our employees. As we continue to navigate these challenging times, there are new risks to manage, such as increased threats from cybersecurity, higher levels of uncertainty, such as the inflation on construction costs, and new opportunities to explore, such as the recent announcement by the province and the UBCM to review the local government finance system. The district is well represented in these discussions on local government finance through staff's leadership in the Regional Finance Advisory Committee, the Asset Management BC, and the Government Finance Officers Association of BC. And according to the UBCM policy paper that you can see on the image on the right there, local government financial, the future of local government finances and the new economy include characteristics that will be rapidly evolving, innovation-driven, diverse and inclusive, low carbon, circular, and sustainable. So with all this in mind and all of the changes going on over the last few months, many municipalities have taken stock of the effects of inflation, major contracts that have been renewed, especially with the RCMP, and project delays, and are generally recommending higher tax increases this year. While these effects would result in a higher property tax increase, the recommended 3% increase maintains our competitive long-term approach and directs 1% to asset management to ensure continued excellence in service delivery. The 3% increase is achieved through ongoing cost management and use of surplus, while staff develop further adjustments and have time to reassess if recent spikes in inflation are the new normal or will subside over time. The district's 10-year average municipal tax increase, as shown on the left, continues to compare well with other municipalities in the region. With respect to other taxing jurisdictions, which has come up in previous meetings, the full impact on our ratepayers won't be known until later this spring. One matter that we do have information on is the potential impacts from the increased provincial school tax on properties valued greater than $3 million. With residential assessment values increasing, we expect a greater number of district properties to be impacted by this additional tax this year, and we'll bring forward more information on these impacts in the near future. The financial plan is available on the district's website, and beginning tomorrow morning, staff will be available to answer questions throughout the public input period. I'd like to mention, before I end this presentation, the contributions of our section manager of financial planning, Shirley Young, and her team. They've made most of this information possible, and it's been a very challenging time with so much change to account for and adjust for, and Shirley and her team continue to distinguish themselves and go above and beyond what we might normally expect. So with that, I'd like to thank Shirley for all her hard work and for getting the plans to this stage. That concludes my presentation, and we look forward to supporting council and the public through the upcoming process.
Thank you, Mr. Daniluk, and thank you to the entire finance team for bringing this matter forward, and noted your special thanks to Shirley Young for all of her extra efforts. At this time, I'm going to move receipt of the staff recommendation, which is move receipt for second on the matter. Okay, I see Councilor Hanson. Just my own comments, just very brief, recognizing this is an introduction and we're only just seeing this on table, but it is good to see that we still have a competitive advantage over some of our neighbors when it comes to taxation. I note that that was 1, 5, and 6 is your class breakdown on that page, but even just specifically, if you break out our business portion, we are very competitive in the region and have been very supportive of the businesses in the District of North Vancouver through our taxation policy. Looking forward to the discussion as this process unfolds. I will note, in the last few years, I've loved being able to say that the 5-year financial plan, that over half of the money being contributed towards transportation is focused on active transportation. And I'm not going to be able to say that this year, partly because we owe about $4 million in partnered projects with the province of BC on the highways, and those are not called active transportation pieces. And so unfortunately, my favorite talking point from the budget is dropped down to 1/3 of our transportation capital going forward. But I understand why and appreciate that we need to partner on those projects as well. At this point, I believe, who was the seconder on the matter? Was Councilor Curran. Your comments?
Thank you to staff. I know this is such a huge project every year. It just probably goes on all year, especially now with all of the extra challenges. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone that's worked on it. I know tonight isn't the time to get into the specifics of the plan. We have had some opportunity to provide input and there will be more to come. But I did just want to kind of ask, Mayor Little, you oftentimes talk about the downloads and the amount of funding that we receive versus other orders of governance. And I know that in January, the province did announce an MOU to begin that discussion between the UBCM and the province to formally begin to address the financial future of local governments. And I just wondered if the district would be specifically involved in that process. I know when we think of neighbors in Abbotsford and Lytton, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars of damage from climate impacts, and that's going to increase over time. So, and they talk about the impetus to provide housing and a lot of things that we are not typically set up to handle. So I just wondered, maybe you could provide a little bit of input into those conversations. I think you did list the paper that on one of your slides, I think that might have been from that MOU. I'm certainly involved and interested in that conversation, but I just wondered if you could perhaps comment briefly on that and then just how we might be involved in that process.
Mr. Danilo.
Thank you for the question. Through your worship, we do have representation on committees and subcommittees as we get into these discussions. I know our CFO, Andy Wardell, is also connected through to the province through a number of groups like Asset Management BC and other working groups that he's on. So we definitely will be connected to the process and have a voice. What that voice looks like remains to be seen. And Andy might have some other comments to add.
Wardell.
Through your worship, within the region, municipal finance reform has been taken on by the Mayor's Committee, Metro Vancouver. The Regional Finance Office Committees works through the Regional Administrative Officers Committee to support that Metro Committee. And I would anticipate through both the Regional Administrative Officers Committee and the Mayor's Committee at Metro that the Regional Finance Officers Committee would be working closely with them, and the conduit into, I'll say, UBCM and the province would be through that path.
Yeah, if I could just add my own comments to it, we're also dealing with the matter at different sector levels as well. So transportation is an example. I was part of the Cure Congestion campaign that was getting the federal government, instead of offering $2 billion one year and then nothing, and then $1 billion and nothing in towards major regional infrastructure. The focus was to get a consistent fund returned to local government to help with transportation infrastructure, and the federal government has agreed to that. And so we again see all of these tools lining up in order to be able to transfer infrastructure dollars from federal and provincial coffers to municipalities who are setting the priorities for local and regional infrastructure as it is anyway. So it's happening on multiple tables, but I agree it's definitely something worthy of a white paper and a province-wide analysis. Councilor Curran, follow up?
Yeah, the last piece I'll say is something I think exciting in the space of finance. Well, you know, there's a lot, Rick. I love talking about carbon budgets and all of these riveting conversations that we have. But I also think the at the federal level and how that might factor into the provincial level and hopefully municipal levels, looking at finance through like well-being indexes and looking at them in new ways. And I think that there's work happening at the federal level on that. I think there's some early work happening at the provincial level. So that'll be interesting to see how we incorporate some of the health and well-being, both of our environment and of people, into how we look at the future of finance. So that there's some exciting work in that space. And I know that we'll be on the cutting edge of it. So thank you. And yeah, good luck with all the things that you have to do. There's lots of Excel in your future, I'm sure.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Just a question, actually, a clarification. This is the first year we're going to have a specific online opportunity for people to ask questions. Do people have to identify themselves to ask questions? And will the questions and answers stay up for everybody to see?
Through your worship, yes, I believe you have to create an account, and yes, the answers, the questions and answers will be available for everyone to see. There will be other channels that they can continue to use, so if they wish to write or email.
Mr. Wardell?
Through your worship, it is my understanding that the team that developed the online website does provide the option to opt out and go anonymous. So there is an option to make sure that your questions and answers are anonymous.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wardell was going in and out. Did he say yes to what I asked?
Is that clear enough? Did I get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one other question. If we have residents like we have had in the past several years that want to make a presentation actually before council, one-on-one, can they still do that, or do they have to do it through the online?
Through your worship, presentations before council are still within the scope of the feedback.
Great, and that would probably be on the February 28th night, financial plan, when it ends? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I see no further speakers from council. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much, and thank you to staff for your presentation tonight and for doing a job that I could never do, which is being buried in an Excel sheet for such a long time. Thank you very much. We do appreciate it. The next item up for discussion is item 8.4. This is reducing construction and demolition waste, and I believe we have some comments from staff with Carolyn Jackson and Bo Ocampo. Ms. Jackson, do you have some opening comments?
And thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, this really supports our goal of diverting waste from landfill and supporting the transition to more circular economy. And Ms. Ocampo has just a few slides to share with council, if it's okay with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm looking forward to presenting to you today on reducing construction and demolition waste within our municipality. The reason we chose to focus on regulating construction and demolition waste is that it consists of 1/3 of the waste sent to landfill in our region. And most of this waste is generated through demolition, with a smaller proportion associated with the construction process. This means that the district has a potential opportunity to reduce a large volume of waste and increase material reuse through implementing regulation to require construction and demolition, recycling, and material salvage. The reason this type of waste is problematic is that when a home is demolished, materials are not typically well separated on site, making recycling a challenge as materials are mixed together and hauled away for disposal. So there are some exceptions for hazardous or high value items such as gypsum and metals that are separated. Ideally, building materials are separated on site for transportation to a private facility for recycling and conversion into new products. So where do these materials go if they're recycled? Recycling activities include turning clean wood into biomass, concrete into aggregate, and asphalt getting ground up and used on site for roads. Metal is also a high value material that is typically recovered for recycling. And how about those items for reuse? Well, salvaged building materials such as appliances, cabinets, doors, and hardwood flooring can be taken to used building material stores, reused on site, donated to nonprofit organizations, or sold directly to local builders. And some of you might recognize this waste hierarchy triangle that emphasizes reducing and reusing waste before recycling. Currently, wood in our region is recycled as biomass fuel or landscape mulch, which does not necessarily result in the highest and best use of this material. A few cities, including Vancouver and Portland, have thus gone beyond recycling requirements to encourage material salvage or deconstruction of older homes. Now I'll get into some of the benefits of this work. It conserves landfill space and reduces emissions because virgin materials don't have to be extracted, manufactured, and transported. It creates economic opportunities in terms of service providers for this type of work and also along the supply chain for these materials. Health benefits are another co-benefit of the disassembly process, which results in the minimization of dust and encourages thorough hazardous waste abatement procedures. And another community benefit we've heard from those living in neighborhoods of a house undergoing deconstruction is that they appreciated that the process is a lot quieter than demolition. Of course, regulation doesn't come without its challenges. Recycling and deconstruction can increase costs for builders by adding complexity to their projects. However, some organizations provide tax receipts for reclaimed wood that can be donated to reduce costs. To encourage diversion, waste facilities also typically charge higher tipping fees for mixed loads of garbage, while fees for separated recyclable materials are lower. A shortage of industrial space has been listed as an issue and has been brought up by industry, and finding markets for materials like construction plastics can also be a challenge. And before we get into our proposed next steps, I want to provide some regional and local jurisdictional scan of the current construction, demolition, diversion policies. So to date, 5 municipalities in the region have implemented regulatory measures requiring the recycling of construction and demolition waste. These bylaws in the chart include a refundable fee to incentivize the return of documents from the various facilities to demonstrate compliance. And the return of these fees is dependent on the diversion requirement and providing proof of diversion. So this often entails providing weight scale tickets from those facilities. Many also have a non-refundable administration fee. And most also include a waste generation estimate and waste management plan as part of their process. So onto our local context, on average, about 100 demolition permits for single family dwellings are issued by the district each year. This figure depicts the number of demolition permits used for single family homes between 2016 and 2020 and provides us with the context of the typical age of homes being demolished in the district. So most originally being built between 1950 and 1959. It's important to note that older homes typically contain materials that are easier to separate compared to the composite building materials that are used in modern construction. So where do we go from here? Staff think this is an important work as salvage and recycling regulations support the diversion of waste from landfill, reinforcing the district's commitment to zero waste and shifting towards a more circular economy. And so therefore we are seeking council's direction to proceed with stakeholder engagement regarding regulations to reduce this type of waste. Our proposed approach will consist of mandatory recycling requirements and phased requirements for deconstruction based on vintage. We're still working out specific details, and we'll put these questions forward to industry if we proceed to consultation. And we are also undertaking a demolition materials market analysis to evaluate the current future capacity of local recyclable and salvage materials that come from the district. And that's to determine the feasibility of implementing such regulations at this time. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Curran, do you have a motion?
I support the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Back. Councillor Curran, go ahead with your comments.
Thank you for the presentation. This is exciting to see this work moving forward, especially given that it is such a large percentage of what goes into landfill and that there are alternatives. We presented this, or we didn't. Bo presented this to the Climate Committee, the Climate Action Committee, and it was a great interactive process where we did a Miro board, and lots of people had ideas to share about how other ways to engage folks in this. So I think there was a lot of support. Do you think that's an accurate characterization? I felt like it was very supported at that committee level, and we had a presentation from people who are working in the space to find value and things that certainly have value. And so I think it's exciting. It seems to make sense to go out and engage. There's lots of work happening in this space, as staff mentioned, as we move towards hopefully regenerative, at least circular economy. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see this move forward. And from the looks of it, a lot of the homes that are being taken down in our community would have potentially easier to separate materials given their age. So I think that's encouraging, and this is what we need to be doing. Lots more of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation and all the work that's been done on this topic so far. Yeah, I'm definitely supportive of the next stage in terms of reaching out to industry and other stakeholders and finding out their take on this approach. I do think it is the right direction to be going in. I remember the presentation that we had from the unbuilders and some of the great work that they're doing in this area. So definitely interested in continuing to find out more. I think some of the challenges that you highlight in your presentation and in the report are true, and we're going to have to navigate, in terms of demolition materials and the capacity and being able to do this and scale this up for the whole community. I think, may present a challenge sometimes. I know myself on a very small scale example, just trying to dispose of some drywall or gypsum, and it's not as easy maybe as it should be. So I think there will be maybe some growing pains as we kind of go through this, but definitely supportive of this direction and heading to the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. I'm also in support of this. I sit on the Zero Waste Committee for Metro Vancouver, and construction and demolition waste is one of the biggest challenges facing us in that area, because it's we have a very low diversion rate compared to the other sectors where we actually have North America-wide leading rates for diversion. One of the challenges is it's going to put at conflict several priorities that we have, because some of the things that are very effective at improving the insulation value of our homes and making it so that we have airtight facilities that can actually use just a trickle of heating sources, they're not actually very deconstructible. So a lot of times people are using spray foam as an insulation. Well, the old foam, which wasn't as effective, is actually easier to reuse than the new spray foam that also marks up all of the other pieces that it touches and makes them not usable. So there's still some development areas that we're going to have to address to conquer those challenges, but it's very important. I've mentioned before in the past, I worked in the lumber industry for about 20 years. And one of the challenges that we have is when a piece of, we wouldn't grade a piece of lumber, one piece of lumber at a time. You would grade about 3% of the total volume that would come through. You'd get a representative sample. You'd verify that the mill was following the correct standards, and then you would assume that the vast majority of the product that came through would meet all of the requirements that you would have. When you go to reuse a piece of lumber, every single piece needs to be fully inspected. And it makes it very difficult to be able to reuse wood that has been housed in dry environments, that has been probably effectively still has the same, what they call MSR, machine stress rating for the wood, that you would find out of an inspected piece of new lumber that comes through the facilities. And so by policy, particularly provincial policy, we've made it very hard to reuse many of the elements that are the core pieces by weight of the construction of a house. And so we'll do our best to adjust the municipal pieces, but the provincial policies are critically important to being able to get the big wins, which is that a building is designed with deconstructible components from day one, and that we can recover and deconstruct and reuse the main pieces of the building, and we're not there yet. We have a long way to go on that, but very supportive of this effort, and again, it certainly also supports the priorities that Metro Vancouver has on the Zero Waste Committee, and so I look forward to seeing what suggestions come out of this process. Any other members of council wishing to comment on the matter? Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Actually, it's more of a question. I can see how this will, I'm in favor, by the way, of this, but I can see how this is going to add costs to builders. And I'm just wondering, on a small scale, if a homeowner's doing a renovation, is the idea that we will still have like a large one stop where you may have to separate it all out, but you can divide it all out in one spot? Or are we going to create more problems for homeowners if they're doing a small renovation, that they have to make 10 trips to get rid of it, 10 different places to get rid of everything? Maybe staff could just tell me what the discussion has been around that.
Yeah, thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Forbes, it's a great question, and actually something that we really hadn't contemplated this regulation applying to, but certainly for clarity, I think really what we're talking about is full-scale demolitions and not renovation work at this time, but certainly a great question to raise, and something that we'll certainly deal with and investigate during the stakeholder consultation. But really, we're not looking at, we're really just focused on the full-scale demolitions at this time.
Okay, I asked that question because I was involved with some renovation of my parents' house, and the drop-off spot on the other side of Haney, you had to have your stuff all separated, but it was in one large facility where you put everything. So it didn't require a lot of travel all over the place. So I'm glad you guys are thinking of that. And thank you very much for the report.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. I see no further speakers at this time, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, staff, for your report, and thank you, council, for your comments. Next item up for discussion is the 2022 Parcel Tax Roll Review. It's a annual housekeeping matter. Do we have any comment from staff on this, Mr. Wardell?
Yes, through your worship. This is the annual parcel tax roll review. Statutorily, council has to set a date for this committee to review the roll, and it's an administrative matter.
I'll be moving the recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Next item up is the UBCM Poverty Reduction Planning and Action Program, North Shore Stream 2 applications. This is item 8.6. And I believe we have some comments from staff. Ms. Adva, welcome.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Little, members of council. Thank you so much for this chance to describe this grant proposal application to you tonight. This is a proposed application for funding under the Provincial Poverty Reduction Program. This opportunity falls under Stream 2, which is really geared towards action for poverty reduction, and it's intended to support local communities undertake local projects. The maximum amount available for a regional project is $150,000. You'll recall last year about this time, February 2021, Council gave direction for a regional application under Stream 1, which was really about developing a poverty reduction plan for the North Shore. We were successful, fortunately, in getting this grant, and the work is underway. And we anticipate that a completed plan will be available for late spring, early summer. So under Stream 2, we're proposing that we work with the District of West Vancouver and the city again on what we're identifying as a North Shore Solutions Navigator Program, or Navigator Program for short. This is a project that we see value in assisting community members who are facing conditions of poverty or at risk of facing them to access important programs and services. So to give you some examples of how it works, a navigator would be hired to work one-on-one with people who are facing these conditions to find the right kinds of supports for them. It would be varied as the individual need exists. It might be around skill building. It might be around subsidies for transit, childcare, etc. It might be around accessing the right kind of housing, assistance with forms and applications. So the thinking behind a navigator is that would really touch on all the multiple areas of poverty. This would be also a face-to-face service that's free, welcoming, and personal, and this makes it a little bit unique from other support programs which require often individuals to meet certain criteria before they can access services. The idea for the Navigators program was shaped through a lot of discussion with our service agencies on the North Shore, as well as the North Shore Poverty Reduction Task Force, who has been assembled to work on Stream 1, the Poverty Reduction Plan. The Navigator program is proposed to be hosted out of the North Shore Neighborhood House. And to finish, we see a number of benefits to this program, not only to individuals, but to the district. Firstly, we have an opportunity to take advantage of provincial funding that can help local people connect to established community and provincial services. And this is a way of providing more coordinated and integrated service delivery. It also, at the human level, gives people empathy and listening that often they need during stressful events, which we know have been amplified during the last couple of years. As well, it helps protect vulnerable residents who may fall through the crack from other programs or services. And all in all, we believe this has the potential to help district residents disrupt or break the cycle of poverty and live healthier lives. There are 3 recommendations before you tonight: 1, to receive this report; 2, to direct staff to work with the District of West Van and the City of North Vancouver for a joint regional application under Stream 2. And lastly, that Council supports the District of West Vancouver as the primary applicant to move this application forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adfa. Council, looking for your direction on the matter. Councilor Forbes, moved by Councilor. Is there a seconder on the matter?
Second.
By Councilor Back. Councilor Forbes, your comments?
We can never do enough good work in this area, and it's a need, and it's becoming even more and more of a need. So we might as well take opportunity of grants and again have a multi-North Shore strategy to fight this. Thank you.
Very much. Councilor Back.
Very brief comment along the same lines as Councilor Forbes. Very happy to support this, and really pleased at the collaborative nature of this from the beginning and looking across the North Shore. And this second phase, I do like the one-to-one nature of it and the fact that it's very inclusive in terms of who could potentially be helped by this. So I'm pleased to see this moving forward, and again, happy to support it.
My own comments on the matter, I'm cautious to be critical of a grant, but I have to say, as I was going through this, with the provincial government in particular, prioritizing this area, $7.2 billion into housing and affordability options within the community, I found that the grants are not keeping pace with the cost of doing these kinds of studies. And I thought I just at least wanted to put out there that I think that if this is priority of the government, provincial government, the federal government, that the support to municipalities to take action on these areas needs to be higher. It's the kind of work that is going to take consultant work, and the costs are going to far exceed the grants that are coming forward. So I want to encourage all of those partners to put the money where their promises are, and support municipalities in moving these items forward through more robust grants that represent the real cost to deliver these projects. Councillor Curran.
Thank you to staff for bringing this forward. Happy to support, and also pleased to see the work that's happening with Squamish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh, on the task force that sort of, I think, came before this, but this is a continuation of that work. And there's just a lot of really dedicated folks in our community working on the complexity around this, from both mental health and addiction, and their stories are often not shared. And I've worked with some people who really do frontline support, and they feel like, Mayor Little, to your point, like they're not receiving anywhere close to the level of support that they need to keep people safe and alive. And I think that I really appreciated, Ms. Adfa, your comment about the humanity and the connection, and one of the sort of most stark outcomes of the heat dome, obviously the loss of life, but then the way that people were more susceptible to dying in that event was because of being disconnected. So I think the people feeling like they're connected, and the trauma-informed approach that is being used as one of the guidelines or the mandates of the committee, I think is really important. So there's lots for all of us to continue learning about that. It's not something we encounter enough without going out and seeking more information and hearing more of those stories. But there's certainly, as everyone has indicated, a need, and what people are saying in community who are working at the front lines, like right now with the pandemic, has just made everything that much harder. So I hope they get support as well, because the people who are providing support also need support. But yeah, I'm very pleased to see this moving forward. And to Mayor Little's points, I do think that it is chronic underfunding that has led to some of these areas where we are in intersecting crises, and they're only going to get worse, and there's lots of work to do. So I'm really grateful for the work that is happening, and hopefully a lot more of it can continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Okay, I see no other speakers from council, so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. The next item up for discussion is item 8.7, and we have a speaker that is signed up to speak from a member of the public, had signed up ahead of time. So just getting Mr. Teven connected to the meeting. Peter Teven, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Welcome. I understand you were going to switch to some slides. Is that correct?
Yes. Is that agreeable?
Why don't you go ahead, and then we'll confirm that those are up and running, and then we'll start your time.
Okay. It should be showing now.
Yes, it is. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Peter Teven, 1900 Block Indian River Crescent. I want to speak tonight in support of the agenda, but I will say the agenda item, but I will say it's a qualified support. Most of you on council know that transportation and more specifically the conduction of people over the Burrard Inlet is of primary importance to me and to my local community here in Seymour. I want to tell you that I think that the proposal, the BERT proposal, the Burrard Inlet Rapid Transit solution as it's proposed, will only be supported, in my opinion, by the majority of District and North Vancouver voters and residents if it includes the following things. First of all, that BERT line goes over and includes a replacement for the aging ironworkers bridge, and I'll elaborate a little bit on that in a second. That it includes some sort of either on-demand or far-reaching community shuttle service that will bring District of North Vancouver people to the BERT line. And then, of course, a timeline and budget that we can live with. I took the liberty of mapping out the budget here. This plan is a 10-year plan. It wasn't clear whether the construction would take place within that 10 years or if it was going to be beyond that 10 years. But a couple of things to point out. At 10 years out, the Ironworkers Bridge will be 72 years old. And the typical life, and this comes from a very informed and expert source, typical life of a structure like the Ironworkers Bridge, 80 years. And as an aside, the Portman Bridge was replaced at 45 years of age. Of course, the bridge now is the second busiest bridge in all of Metro Vancouver, second only to the new Portman. And if you include the SkyTrain rail bridges, because of course, right now SkyTrain doesn't go over the Portman. In this case, we're hoping that the BERT line would go over the Ironworkers. If you include those two lanes on the Sky Bridge, then the Portman is double the capacity of the Ironworkers. The Ironworkers also is not seismically up to spec. It's currently over capacity, and there's other factors, risk factors, including seismic events. It's near a chlorine plant. It's at risk of getting hit by heavy shipping. So there's a lot to consider about that bridge. Some time ago, I had drawn up a facsimile of what such a bridge would look like. Increased capacity, including separated cycle lanes, including LRT lines, and an increase of capacity to the port and local traffic. I think this is key. And just to revisit that other issue, you know, at 10 years out in this plan, we'll have 8 years left before the Ironworkers is pretty much likely going to be falling down. Notwithstanding, of course, the event a couple of months ago where we got a hole right through the deck. I took the liberty of taking the map from the report and overlaying it as close to scale as I could over the full map of the North Shore. And what you can see here, Council, is a substantial area of the District of North Vancouver that didn't even factor into the map.
Mr. Teven, I'm just going to have to interrupt. So we're well beyond 3 minutes already.
Okay, sorry. Doing my best.
You have more to contribute to the conversation. I'm just going to recommend that you send this presentation to the council, but we're going to have to move on at this point tonight.
I understand. Okay, I will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Teven.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a presentation from staff. I believe it includes 6 slides, if I'm not mistaken. That might be off. Mr. Carney, I see you there. Do you have any opening comments on the matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a short, brief presentation. It is a total of 7 slides. I can run through this in likely 5 minutes or so.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you please confirm that you can see the presentation?
It's not full screen yet, but it looks like it's generally working.
Okay, is that full screen?
Doesn't appear to be going to full screen.
Sorry, I've got one too many monitors, I think is the problem here. Let me try that again.
Yeah, Steve, you brought up the presentation on notes page. You might want to go with full screen.
Yeah, it's full. Sorry, it's full screen on my other monitor. Let me just see if I can sort this out here.
It's okay. It always seems worse for the person who's trying to find it.
Is that full screen?
That's full screen.
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry, I've used up a minute. I'll try and be quick here. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present the opportunity of a a rapid transit connection across the Burrard Inlet, as well as the regional planning process. And I'll just touch on some of the benefits associated with the rapid transit connection. With respect to the regional planning process, Transport 2050 was approved by the Mayor's Council on January 25th, just recently. Public consultation began on this in 2019, so it's been a few years in the works. Some of the key objectives of Transport 2050 include reduced greenhouse gases, improved connectivity, providing travel choices, etc., encouraging a mode shift, connecting First Nations communities, improving access to parks and natural spaces, and to help provide improved service to transit-oriented communities. Over 100+ actions were identified across the region, and rapid transit to the North Shore is included in Transport 2050. Some of the key opportunities here of rapid transit to the North Shore include improved regional connectivity, improved economic development conditions for businesses across the North Shore, reduced vehicle congestion on the bridge, reduced greenhouse gases, improved ability for North Shore businesses to attract and retain employees, improved connection between employment and residential areas, etc. It's also very much aligned with the OCP action plan. And so we feel that there's a really strong opportunity here for this connection. A benefits assessment was completed in August of 2021. Partners included in the study include the North Shore Chamber, the City of North Vancouver, ourselves, West Vancouver, and the local First Nations on the North Shore, the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh. These two alignments that you see show the most promise, and so they were assessed for their benefits. What I would like to mention, though, is that possible additions or extensions to these rapid transit alignments could include extensions to the Maplewood Village area, Cap U, and Ambleside in West Vancouver. Also, a future rapid bus connection between Lynn Valley and Lonsdale Quay is also envisioned. And so really it would be this is kind of illustrating what I would call the backbone of a rapid transit system. And we would layer on top of this local bus service, as well as other first and last mile, infrastructure in terms of active transportation connections, etc. We're still very early in the planning process, and technology and the precise alignment has not yet been confirmed, and so there's still lots of work to do. I will say, though, that based on the TransLink's regional objectives, the BERT project ranks very high, particularly on ridership projections. Here's a quick summary of some of the benefits. And so we've forecasted over 111,000 daily transit trips with a $500 million annual benefit in travel time savings, so pretty substantial. A shift of approximately 50,000 vehicles to transit, vehicle trips to transit. Again, fewer trips by car, reduced congestion, GHGs, etc., reduced road collisions, a near doubling of jobs accessible within a 60-minute transit ride for North Shore residents, and of course, improved access to jobs through an affordable, fast, and reliable transportation option. Both alignments, what we're calling the gold and the purple, are comparable and very high performing. Now, in terms of the regional transportation planning process, we've just finalized, as I mentioned, the Transport 2050. And so what's happening right now is the 10-year vision, as it's called, is currently in draft and will be finalized by June or July of this year. And really what that is it's breaking a 30-year transportation plan into incremental 10-year visions, as they're called. There's no financial commitment to having the BERT project included in the 10-year vision. What will happen is Once the project is included in that, then negotiations begin between all the various levels of government for the funding strategy. And so what we're asking for, and my colleagues at the City of North Vancouver and West Vancouver are actually at their respective councils this evening as well. And what we're asking for is a formal endorsement of the project, and that all local governments on the North Shore endorse the project and advocate to the Mayor's Council that the project is included in the 10-year plan. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Council, I'll be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councilor Hanson. Okay, just my comments. This is a very critical point in this process for us. I mean, the District of North Van has been advocating for a long time for transportation improvements to the North Shore. We haven't had a lane increase since I think in 1958 was the last time we had a lane increase to the North Shore, and yet our population's more than doubled since that time. And we're noticing it every day that our infrastructure is under incredible stress. And this is one of the most important pieces to giving us relief, which is providing a reasonable alternative for people in our community to get out of their cars and be able to transport and connect to the South Shore economy with reliable success. The other piece is obviously a lot of people come to our community each day. In fact, there's probably more people coming to our community than there are people leaving from our community. And we're also seeing a tremendous number of people on our weekend shifts. So actually, we've been reaching our peak numbers on bridge volumes consistently on weekend days. So the number of people that are coming to our community for recreational purposes has absolutely ballooned in the last number of years. And we have to come up with a regional solution to this issue. We participate very actively in all of the Translink discussions up to now. We've created what was called INSTEP, the Integrated North Shore Transportation Planning Project, to articulate those concerns and work with our partners. But the challenge we had at INSTEP was the provincial government, the federal government, and TransLink were all at the table, but they wanted to be separate from the priority setting body. So we created a new body, which is called North Shore Connects, and that includes 2 First Nations representatives and also 3 local government representatives, to be able to say with one united voice that this priority is our top priority for transportation over the next generation coming to this community. I fully support the recommendations. I've been very happy to work on this project together and get this included in Transportation 2050. This project, I see going forward, the purple alignment is really the only viable possibility, or some variation of the purple alignment. The gold alignment sort of has the assumption in it that you would probably end the C-bus service. And if you were ending the C-bus service, the gold alignment would make more sense. But I think it is definitely within our economic interests on the North Shore to maintain the C-bus service. And so the purple alignment makes the most sense. It has great opportunity for bidirectional travel. It has great opportunity for affordable housing throughout its route. And it's going to be, it also is something that could help to support our educational institutions on the North Shore and our major employers, which are many of whom are right along that corridor that's been proposed. So I am very happy to give my wholehearted support for this recommendation. Once the 10-year plan priorities are set, they get an inertia of their own, where the provincial and federal government are routinely saying, it's up to local government to set the priorities, and then we come along and fund the objectives. Well, this is again, so it's been locally endorsed through INSTEP and through Connect. We're now getting it endorsed through Transportation 2050 and through the Mayor's Council. Then it goes to the Mayor's Council 10-year vision. And then, this is just part of its progression towards being viable projects. But the provincial and federal government are going to have to come to the table on these projects to be able to make them viable. We cannot afford to do these projects as individual municipalities. But yes, so with all of that said, I'm happy to move the recommendation. And Councilor Hanson, you're the seconder on the item.
Thank you very much. And I'm obviously just as enthusiastic in seconding the recommendation. Just before I give very few comments, I wonder if Mr. Carney could comment from his perspective on the purple alignment and the gold alignment, and just briefly compare and contrast the benefits of those two options.
Thank you, Councilor Hanson, and through your worship. Yeah, they're both intriguing. I do agree that the purple alignment, which is the Park Royal to Metrotown, as we call it, provides great connectivity in terms of regional rapid transit connection. And so the way to think of it is a bit, instead of another spoke in a wheel, it's more of a, becomes more of a, not so much of a grid, but it's a, provides a greater connectivity within the network. So I can say that the city of Burnaby their council has just endorsed that particular alignment. They're very much in favor of a rapid transit corridor north-south across their community. They basically have two already that are the east-west with the Millennium and Expo lines, sort of diagonally, east-west, if you will. But this would be a north-south and very much aligns with their priorities. And so they've enthusiastically endorsed it. In terms of benefits, they are comparable in terms of what we're seeing from a monetized perspective, in terms of like travel time savings and things like that. But, in speaking with some of the consultants that we had working on the project, they did express a real interest in the purple alignment, in just how it does provide that connectivity piece. Another nice element of this as well is, well, there's a few, but in terms of station capacity, we think that it's a winner in that respect as well, because we know that Waterfront Station is near to capacity. And so adding another line into Waterfront could be problematic. And so one other point with the purple line is that BCIT actually was really well performing. And so it provides a nice connection between, you've got sort of a shopping districts, if you will, on either end, and then you have BCIT and potentially CAPU. And there's lots of synergies, I think, with land use. There's some major film studios proposed in Burnaby as well, near BCIT, that would be, offer some synergies with the North Shore studios. And so it does appear to be really promising.
Thank you very much for those comments. And I too would think that the purple alignment would be the one with the most prospects and benefits. But thank you. It was very interesting to hear your perspective. The benefits of rapid transit at the North Shore are obvious. It's an idea, simply put, whose time has come. It's possibly a decade late in getting underway, but it is an absolutely pressing priority from my point of view. What's required at this point is the creation of the political will. The benefits are absolutely plain: the economic, the social, the environmental benefits. But what is required is a political will. It's going to require will on the part of the federal and provincial governments, and on, of course, TransLink and all of the other potential parties of First Nations and the local governments. It's going to be a collaborative effort. Many hands are going to make light work when it comes to creating this important development across the North Shore. I understand that Langley is underway in terms of the next TransLink rapid transit initiative. And then from my point of view, we should be next. Ours is the most pressing at that stage. Obviously, if we had a rapid transit to and from the North Shore, it would be a complete game changer in terms of how we could approach community planning and land use planning on the North Shore. And the public would feel that matching the increases in density is an increase in transportation infrastructure, which would be a meaningful development. The spurs to Maplewood would be very valuable for the district, obviously. The other spurs that were mentioned. And so we, from my point of view, this motion today is an important step in the creation of this political will, which in turn will bring about rapid transit to the North Shore and an improvement in our way of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Hanson. Any other speakers at this time? Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. Oh, Councilor Forbes, you had a comment?
I'm just curious if you can give us any idea if there's been any sort of unofficial conversation with any provincial government or federal government about this project.
I'm sure I couldn't give any comment about unofficial conversation with the provincial.
You know where I'm going. They know this is coming. Do you have any idea if they've been broached on this 10-year plan that's now going to be put forward to them?
Yes, they've been actively participating. Both Bowen Ma, who's the Minister of Infrastructure and the former chair and founder of the Integrated North Shore Transportation Planning Project, she is actively participating. Also, George Heyman is actively participating in the Mayor's Council priority setting. But we are seeing a number of municipalities already recognizing that the North Shore is next. Now that we have concrete steps on the Patella Bridge crossing, concrete steps going forward on the George Massey connection and Surrey SkyTrain and UBC, that definitely we are in the queue and we are one of the priorities following that. But it's going to be still important for us to make that case over the next few weeks as we go through the workshops to set priorities in the 10-year vision. As Mr. Carney said, that will be more or less ratified in right before the summer break, and so we'll know what the priorities are for that period, and then the pressure moves on to us to start funding them, and so it's going to be a lot of work.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Mr. Joyce, you had a comment as well?
Maybe your final comment, Your Worship, just a quick comment. In my experience, this is the farthest we've ever got on this project. And the simple reason is all three North Shore municipalities are singing from the same song sheet. All three mayors are aligned. And that's been our down giving in the past few years that hasn't happened. But the meetings I attended, all three mayors are speaking. It's technically, there's no line that's even close, whether we're talking about UBC or Langley. It's a winner hands down technically, but the three North Shore municipalities need to stick together in the two First Nations. And it should wind its way into the 10-year plan. And as the mayor alluded to, there's definitely some interest from both provincial and the MPs that are sitting at the table right now.
Yeah, and I got stuck in traffic for 50 minutes on a Sunday afternoon because of the congestion just yesterday. It's definitely affecting the daily life of both people who live here and people who are trying to come here for work opportunities. And so it is a top priority. Council, I see no further speakers on the matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council, and thank you, staff, for all the hard work that you've been doing on this. I know it is an important decision point, but it's also the beginning of a tremendous amount of work. The last report for our regular meeting this evening is item 8.8. This is the Wildland Urban Interface Fire Risk Management and Community Risk Reduction Program for 2022. And joining us this evening is Chief Brian Hutchinson, and then we also have Richard Bose from staff commenting. Mr. Bose, are you going to open, or is Chief Hutchinson going to open?
Your Worship, Chief Hutchison might have something to say, as there's quite a bit more content from his side of the woods, but we're really just looking for, there's a little bit of an update, and we really need the motion from council to secure the extra funding to complement the UBCM grant to complete the fuel treatment program plan for this coming year. Chief?
Thank you, Richard. Through your worship, Mayor Little, I won't belabor the point too much here, but I did want to just say that once again, the UBCM grant process, a very collaborative process through many different departments within the District of North Van. Fire is really, really privileged to work with such a great team of individuals to make sure that our approach to mitigating the risk in our wildland urban interface areas is one that's really focused on resiliency and preventative approach, incorporating that holistic big picture approach to the hazard that we face. So I fully support with what Richard and the entire team have put together, and look forward to moving forward for another year, 2022, with this type of funding.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief Hutchinson. Councillor Kern, you have a motion?
Support the staff recommendation.
Happy to second that. Councillor Kern, your comments.
Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted a quick comment from staff on some of the challenges around when we do clear areas, there's not actually adequate funding to restore and regenerate that area. And so I'm wondering if staff has recommendations for how we can better advocate for that. Like, what would you like to see for when we're doing fire management to be able to regenerate those ecosystems and not just taking things out, but actually putting things back? Is that a barrier that you have identified, or do you have any suggestions for how we could better advocate for that work?
Your Worship, Councillor Curran, most of the recent fuel treatment projects we have done have included a replanting budget as well as the fuel treatment. One of the best examples of that plan was the district only funded work we did in the Kirkstone Park area, where we did our own fuel treatment program and then effected a pretty robust replanting guide. So I know we work with Guy and we recognize that issue of a while ago. So now all of our prescriptions for fuel treatment do include a replanting budget. A lot of times that we don't get the UBCM grant doesn't typically cover the replanting budget. So we work the projects around where we treat the work and we support the project budget with some of our own funds to ensure we get a replanting part component to it.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like that potentially that funding could be updated to include that, because I think it precludes that, which is something. So I'm glad to see that staff is on it and that we are replanting, because I think that's an important part of the ecosystem health as well, and resilience, of course, too. So thanks for that update.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. My own comments on the matter. I've been very supportive of the fuel management programs since the beginning. The grants from UBCM are very appreciated, and we certainly have been a community that's taken the most advantage of those grants province-wide. But the priority for us is even greater than what the grants can provide, and so we're topping up those grants with our own contributions for critically important pieces in our community. We just can't wait for those funds. These areas are areas that present too much risk for us, and so we're going to respond by removing fuel from them, and I fully support that priority. Councillor Bond, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thanks, Mr. Bowes and Chief Hutchinson, for the comments in the report. Also supportive of this initiative. It's been a long-standing initiative that we've been doing over a number of years, and I know when we first started doing it, I think maybe it was in Grouse Woods and some other areas, it can be quite a dramatic change, especially for our residents who are always out in the forest. But if you go back to those areas now, 5, 6, 7 years later, you can actually see how those areas were unhealthy, and how the forest health has improved through a more active management of the tree canopy in those areas. I'm wondering, Mr. Bowes, if where we are at in the total, I guess in the big picture, we have been completing the fuel treatment for a number of years. I remember there was a kind of a long-term plan with priorities set for different treatment areas across the interface area. Where are we at in that plan? And then where do we go? Where do we go next? Do we have to go back to the first area and start again? Do we look at more expansive treatment to mitigate risk further in the alpine area, in areas that are significantly unhealthy forests? I'm wondering if we can get a few comments on that.
Your Worship, Councillor Bond, thank you very much for the question. I know today in doing my prep for tonight's session, there was a couple of questions around exactly what you're talking about. So, you know, I'm pleased to report to Council that we hope to produce the first draft in the first quarter this year of what we're calling our Forest Resiliency Plan. And this plan will address all of the points Councillor Bond has made, including a few others. We have been delayed in finishing that report. It was part of our last set of recommendations or tasks to complete. And it seemed like we'd get the report close to finishing and then we'd have the looper moth outbreak. So we wanted to wait and catch up with that. And then of course, we know last year we had that heat dome and the devastating visual effects. So what we've done now is we've said we're going to package this thing up. We've got to get it complete and start that timestamp on it. So we have a consultant, Mr. Blackwell, and part of his team are out doing some field work for us now to address and look at the issues associated with the looper moth and the heat dome of last summer, so that we can include this in this comprehensive and strategic forest resiliency plan and present that hopefully to Council first quarter of this year. We're actually hoping to maybe have a tree session or a workshop with Council in which we would present the bylaw related matters Council had asked and maybe present this forest resiliency plan at the same time. So this forest resiliency plan is going to look at the areas we've treated and how are they doing. It's going to establish recommendations for revisiting some of these treated areas going forward and what are the kinds of things we need to be looking at, doing, planning, and budgeting for. It's going to be looking at our vulnerability to other kinds of pests as well as climate. And are there other areas that may be falling outside of our narrow sort of fuel management wildfire protection scope, but say general forest strategy? And are there things that we should be monitoring, looking at, and doing in these areas to promote a district-wide resilient and healthy wildfire smart forest? So we're looking very, very forward to presenting that resiliency plan first draft up to Council, hopefully towards the first quarter of this year.
That's great to hear, Mr. Bose. I know the natural areas that we have here that just border the places where we live and work are valued so much by our residents and those around the region. And I know with changing climate and other risk factors, we do need to take a much more active role in monitoring and managing the health of those areas. So very appreciative of that, and appreciative of the work that that your department does in managing our public areas, and the work that Chief Hutchison and your team do at helping our our residents and homeowners managing the risks around private property as well, and educating and bringing people up to speed on how to minimize risks associated with fire.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bond. No further speakers on the matter? Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Bose, for your presentation. Thank you, Chief Hutchinson, and thank you, Council. Okay, moving on to reports from Council or staff. There was one item I wanted to just bring to the attention of the Council. We had the passing of a staff member from the District of North Vancouver. Mr. Joyce, are you on the line here still, or Mr. Stewart, maybe you can address it, but Patty Duke, the longest serving staff person with the District of North Vancouver has passed away. I believe it was 56 years of service with the District of North Vancouver. So an incredible legacy of service to the community. And so our thoughts go to the family of Patty and all the people that over the decades have worked with him in our streets department. Mr. Stewart, he even predated you. Do you have any comments? You must have worked with Patty over the years.
I can't say I hired him.
Yeah.
But certainly what's more amazing is that he served in the operations area all that time. And, you know, really, you know, put his shoulder into his work. He was well appreciated by the folks that he worked with. And certainly you couldn't say, even in the latter part of his career, that, you know, he had given up or was coasting or anything like that. I mean, he was more than willing to do his share. And we really appreciate his service. It's a good testimony to many of the employees in the district that, you know, come for a day and leave decades later because they really like serving our community. So kudos to Patty. I don't know, Gavin might have something else to say as well.
Joyce might have stepped away, but yeah, it's an incredible legacy, and you know, it's a career goal, I guess. You know, 56 years with the same organization is a level of loyalty and commitment that is unmatched, and I would say that that's a record that's going to stand for a very long period of time. But we just wanted to express our appreciation to the family for the contribution of Patty to our community. So. Council, I have no further reports to make tonight, so I'm going to look around the table. Do any members of council wish to make a report? Mr. Stewart would like to make a report.
Just very quickly, we're continuing to work with Metro on a new contractor for the treatment plant, and we'll provide council with information as we progress in that area. You may or may not have seen the media releases with respect to the newly formed CAR 22, which is a combination of having our RCMP officers work with Coastal Health to provide mental support out with the cruisers, which is a model that's worked successfully elsewhere, and we're really hopeful that this will be equally as successful in North Vancouver. I just want to briefly comment on, you know, I didn't come in the budget, but we continue to live in a world of uncertainty, and staff have done I just want to say just a fantastic job with all that uncertainty, and believe me, with inflation and construction costs and all kinds of things that are just out there, COVID. I'm just really proud of the way that not only have they banged together a budget this year that I think reflects council's priorities, but in general, and I know in some cases council, you know, and it's natural, can be impatient about us moving the dial. But I think some of the things that you're starting to hear this year will resonate into further years after that this council will leave a legacy in terms of actually changing the dial on whether it's transportation or housing. Or other priorities of council. So I just wanted to add that comment. I just want to recognize the staff for that.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I think that represents council's view on the matter as well. Members of council, do you have any reports to make? Okay. Not tonight. Great. Well, thank you all so much for participating, and thank you to the members of the public who stuck with us through the meeting tonight and through these important issues that we had to discuss. I wish everybody a fantastic week and have a great night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Little, you were traffic. You weren't in traffic.
What? I was traffic.
You were
Yes.
traffic. You weren't in traffic.